Alexandra, I wrote your name down. Angelescu, sorry about that. And then we'll be followed by Michelle Reed, and then Bennett. I will read each person's bio, and then they will give a brief talk. There will be time for a little time for questions at the end of each talk, and then at the very end of the program, we'll have a couple minutes left where we can also, field some questions for the general group. So without further ado, Alexandra Angelescu is an education researcher at the University of Bucharest in Romania. She's currently pursuing a PhD focused on educating young researchers for effective science communication. She developed the program Games of Science, which she's going to talk about in just a few minutes, which is a project aimed at coaching young scientists in public speaking and then putting their skills to the test as part of a competition. She has more than 25 years of experience in mass media, and also over a decade of applied improvisation practice. Thus, she has honed her skills as trainer, although she did admit earlier that she is more comfortable training than actually talking about the training, but she will do just grand today. Fueled by her passion for work, she's here to share some of the valuable insights that she's gained from her efforts in Romania. Take it away, Alexandra.
Thank you so much. I want to put it out here. I hope I'm a better trainer and researcher than I'm a presenter. I also want to say that the presentation that I shared with April earlier on was done with the help of artificial intelligence. I put some things that I do and I asked to make it into a presentation. So some of the words that sound inflated, artificial intelligence tend to be, expansive in different ways. So just to go into what I wanted to share, I put out front the fact that I'm from Romania because it's tempting to, for me, think, oh, I'm from Romania, how would that impact you? There are some specific elements. We are a former communist country, and also we had a horrible experience with research. The former first lady was a so-called chemist, and research is a joke in Romania. If you go on the street and ask people, what do you think about Romanian research? They say, oh, the first lady from 30 years ago. Nobody believes Romanians are doing any research. So a little bit more to get to the scientists and the researchers to speak to the public, because there is a little bit more, I would say, pushback from the public who's not involved in research when they come and talk about what they do. So I'm an educationalist. That means I look at what I do from that perspective, what I'm trying to solve, and why am I in this group is because I think first we need to address who, how, and why the researchers and the scientists are interacting with the public, and then look at how what they are doing and then what the public gets. So I'm at the head of the problem. How do we get the scientists to be more interested, more willing to interact with public, what is public to them, and then see how well they do it. And I've done semester-long courses, I've done short courses, I've done different ways of interacting, different education interventions, because when you have, all you have is a hammer, everything you see is a nail. So I'm trying to solve things with trainings and courses by teaching people to do it better. And probably you know my thesis in 3 minutes, FameLab, they have been around for a while. There are competitions for young researchers to hone their public speaking skills. And such competitions have been around for a while, and they haven't done much. They are part of that old-fashioned deficit model, because they train scientists to sit in front of the audience and deliver a nice discourse about what they know best to people who don't have a lot of impact on what they are doing. And before I go further, I will share my screen because I have some nice drawings that would probably make what I'm saying a little bit clearer. Sorry, this is, let me start from here because that's where I landed. My offer to you today is something that I call the Games of Science that has started 3 years ago, which is still a public speaking competition. I would call it public speaking as extreme sports. Those people that you see in nice drawings are researchers, young researchers, 20 to 35 years old. They have a day of training where they train more to do the competition than in general public speaking. What is happening, we have a jury. What the jury has to do is decide from each pair of people who are in the competition who goes further. So I'm presenting, France is presenting, and then the jury says, okay, congratulations, France. Thank you, Alexandra. France, go to the next round. And so on. It's like a tennis tournament. The problem is they start with 15 seconds rounds. So they have to talk about what they are doing in 15 seconds plus or minus 1 or 2 seconds. And that's extremely hard because most of the time people are coming saying, oh, I cannot say what I'm doing because my research is important and the science is so, and my methodology is important. How can I do it in 3 minutes? And then we go to them and say, okay, this is how you do it in 3 minutes, but then you have first to do it in 15 seconds. And that's even harder. And it's harsh. And some people, they train for all the duration and they get excluded from the first round. And that's hard. As I said, it's cruel and unusual punishment. But the whole point is, and that's why I call it because it's like a Trojan horse. It looks like we are training them for something extremely competitive, and we made it so ridiculously competitive that basically the competition becomes just a pretext. So what we are doing is we are training for cooperation. All the training beforehand is based on giving feedback to each other. We showcase as a team of trainer teamwork. We give feedback in groups, in small groups, in big groups. And the rule of the competition is if you are eliminated by someone, you become that person's biggest supporter. So if I'm the first one and I have been eliminated by the second person, by the time they are in the second round and they get to speak for 30 seconds, I'm their biggest supporters and I cheer them on. And then if they get eliminated, the two of us with the first one from the first round, the person who goes to the third round, they have like 3 people who are in their corner and cheering and supporting, and in the breaks, giving feedback, giving advice, giving emotional support. And by the time they get to the finals, each one of the finalists have in their corner half of the team. And we think about it as a team, and most of the time people are in the end going together to have a beer. And then what we are doing with this whole program is we are building connection between people, and it's very important. And somehow that's, again, Trojan horse. They come because they feel like public speaking is a useful tool to have as a researcher. You present at conferences, you might have to defend your dissertation. So there is this interest, not a lot of people. It's not like we have like hordes of people trying to get into this program. The first year we had 100 people registered. The second year we had 200 people registered in 8 rounds, because we work in 8 rounds, and after each session in one of university city, we get the finalists to come to the national finals, and we have another one at the end. But still, so 200 people, and this year we are in the middle of this training. In fact, I'm out of next door. My co-trainers are training. They are in the middle of the sessions. They are in the third quarter where they are doing a round of feedback on the 15-second presentation to everybody in the group. And that's the other part. people who have been in the session at the beginning, they are now, some of them, trainers, organizers, volunteers in the session. We work with more than 50 people. And to that point, I'm trying to get to the next slide, and I don't know how. Well, if I don't get it, I will stop sharing and I will come back. The whole point is we encourage them to form their own groups of scientists who work together. People in university centers in Romania, they don't work together. They don't know if they are from a technical institute. They don't necessarily work with the theoretical, the research university. And if they are from medicine school, they don't work. And then they get to meet here and they discover that they can work together as well. So our experience from the previous 2 years plus this one is they get to work together. They started looking at each other and starting even to deliver. So it's an overclaim. They do better science by interacting with people who are outside of their own fields, by playing together. Because I claim some experience in applied improvisation. Half of the training is based on games and exercises that are inspired by the whole ethos of applied improvisation, which is make the other look good. So we share that with them. And now to my research, what I'm researching right now is different from what I started researching initially. Initially, it was how can we change the norms in the scientific community. Romanian scientific community has the impact of norms in the theory of planned behavior together with attitudes and self-efficacy is important in the intent to interact with the public. So you have 3 drivers, and so they have different impacts. And in Romania, the norms have no impact. And the assumption I made was that because of this whole horrible history we have, the scientific community doesn't act as a community, they act as individuals. So we don't have this pull to work together and make a bigger science together. So I started looking at how we can get scientists to work more together. I ended up looking at how, I started by looking at how they get more interested in doing more with the public, and I ended up thinking, let's see if we can get them to work together more, and by getting them to work together more, get them to communicate with the general audience, different publics better. So what I'm researching right now is we are looking at the way the participants interact with each other, the connection they are making between each other and with their trainers, and see whether that impacts the end result, the quality of their science communication and public speaking about science that they are delivering. So,
Alexandra, I'm sorry to interrupt. Just want to make sure I need to move on to the next speaker in a couple minutes. Would you like to fill the time with your discussion, or would you like to field questions? It is up to you.
I would like to take questions. I just want to make this whole arc. The whole point is we started with looking at how we can get people more interested as individuals, and now we are looking at how we can get people to interact, and then as teams get them to experience the public as another form of interaction.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I really liked how you built the collegiality into the games of science with the with where everyone ends up cheering on the last 2 people. I think that's really phenomenal, and I think that really enhances some of the learnings that you are that you have or that you're trying to make in the training. So I'm opening it up to the group for a couple minutes for questions, and again we'll have a few minutes at the end. But what questions from the group? What can Alexandra tell you?
I'll jump in
one
quick.
question. Oh, sorry. Go ahead,
sorry,
Christopher. Take it away.
Chris. Can you talk a little bit more about the training? What is it that you like? What's the process like? What do you teach them to prepare for the games of science?
Strangely enough, we start by, or not strangely, we start by talking about identity. The first level is talk about yourself, and we start with a game where they get to know each other, and their first, we scaffold it, and the first thing we ask them is to name themselves. So they present each other, and then the game is to name yourself and then name a quality that starts with the same letter as your name, and then a gesture and so on. And then we ask them to make the presentation that they want to be presented by. And that's the first layer, and that's interesting, but not so. But the second stage is we talk about status. And we talk about how, what status you have as opposed to the power you have. Because after 2 years, my co-trainers who are former participants told me that they find it crucial. So if you start from not understanding that communication happens as long as you are at similar levels, and you want to communicate from a very high level because you know more than the others, that's going to stand to undermine all your efforts about how to control your emotions, how to structure your speech, and then we go into structures and mechanics of the competition. But yes, we start with the status.
Excellent.
But I can go in more details later.
Yeah,
that's really interesting.
That's great.
Thank you.
So I think at this point, we're going to move on to our next speaker. And again, we'll have questions at the end. Thank you so much, Alexandra. Really appreciate you taking the time. Michelle, are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Michelle is a master lecturer in science communication and the science communication graduate program at Laurentian University in Sudbury, Ontario, Canada. Since 2017, she's been leading courses that weave together theoretical perspectives and practical skills that are needed to communicate science with non-specialist audience. In each of her classes, undergraduate, pardon me, she's passionate about creating a supportive classroom environment where students can build confidence and competence as professional science communicators. Take it away, Michelle.
Wonderful. Thank you for having me. I am excited to share my experience today with Northern Med Talks. It is a TED Talk style speaking event featuring 10-minute stories from local health professionals, and our Laurentian University graduate students are involved in all aspects of producing, hosting, and evaluating this engaging event. So before I dive into the details of this activity, I wanted to provide a bit of context of our program to help situate us. So the Science Communication program at Laurentian University offers a 1-year master's degree and a 10-month graduate diploma in science communication with 15 full-time students per year. And we are fortunate to co-deliver our program alongside Canada's second largest science center, Science North. And this unique partnership allows our students to learn from visitors of all ages by partnering on exhibit development, live programming, and outreach events like Northern Med Talks. The Med Talks event comes at the end of a very busy 8 months for our students. They've spent the fall term learning the theory that underpins effective communication, like how do we understand our audiences, how do they learn, and how can we design accessible and engaging materials for them. And this project is the culminating activity of their winter term, where students practice applying this theory and best practices to hands-on projects through diverse media formats. They then bring their experience from this practical term into the spring, where they embark on work placements and conduct original research. So the deliverable for the Northern Med Talks project is an evening event for 350 audience members, and it is also live streamed on TV and on YouTube. Our students work one-on-one with local healthcare professionals to co-create presentations for a curious, non-specialist adult audience. And our presentation partners come from a variety of career stages and play diverse roles in our community, including clinical researchers, patient advocates, flight paramedics, emergency physicians, and medical students. We have taught audiences how to do hands-only CPR, what it means to be a nurse practitioner, and how to think differently about end-of-life care. So the goals of this event include helping audience members to learn something new about their own health, to understand health challenges in our community and to build connections with healthcare providers and researchers working in our region. We aim to inspire, engage, inform, and hopefully make positive contributions to the health and well-being of our communities. Now, that is a lot to ask from a graduate course final assignment, but we have promising feedback from our audiences that tells us that we are making progress on those aims. So I wanted to share 3 insights today that we've gleaned over the 5 years of refining this activity, and hopefully you are able to take something from those recommendations to apply to your own teaching activities. So the first is to leverage the strengths of all partners involved in the project. The second is to support flexibility and independence with a safety net. And lastly, to set firm and non-negotiable constraints in order to encourage creativity. So let's start with the first one, leveraging the strengths of our partners. This activity is a really interesting way to learn and practice science communication because of its unique co-mentorship model. Our students bring their growing expertise in audience-focused communication, and our presenters bring their subject matter expertise and experience working with patients in diverse settings. They exchange skills and perspectives, challenging each other as they create a 10-minute story together. Our students learn to advocate for our audience's needs, to provide constructive feedback, and to convey nuance with sensitive health topics. And our presenters learn to speak in new ways. Many of them are very accomplished conference presenters, but this might be the first time that they've shared their work with their families or their neighbors or friends. And this partnership mutual learning is supported by our program's faculty, where we bring expertise and advice on effective communication strategies, and by the leaders at Science North, who excel at engaging public audiences through professionally designed events. So we all learn from each other throughout this process. Each year we evaluate and evolve in response to what we've learned. And I encourage you, when working with clients, community partners, or subject matter experts, to invite them to share their expertise and let it strengthen the nature of your collaborative work. This brings me to insight number 2, to support flexibility and independence with a safety net. When you promise the public an evening of engaging, inspiring, and informative stories, it is important that you deliver on that promise. So we are accountable to our audiences and to provide them with a memorable and powerful event, while also giving our students and presenters the autonomy and ownership over their final product. So we provide this freedom by setting the event's goals, but letting the presentation partners craft the nature of their working relationship. Do they want to sit side by side together and write a script, or do they want to meet, occasionally exchange ideas? Should the students shadow the researcher in their lab or clinic to gain practical experience, or should they start by reviewing previous talks by their presenter to translate them for this new audience? The partnerships jointly decide on their key messages, their tone, their visuals, even musical cues. No 2 partnerships are the same, and that's part of what makes the final story so diverse and interesting. However, we have learned that it is important to provide a foundation of support for these partnerships as they evolve. So we have a team of students, faculty, and Science Center staff who work as our logistics technicians, and they are responsible for getting the presentations finalized for our big night. This team checks in with the presenters throughout their process, troubleshoots technical issues, and does all final approvals. It is truly a balancing act to give students the freedom to build something amazing and unique, but still building in extra time and resources to swoop in if a team needs some last-minute help. And each year we get closer to finding the ideal balance of hands-off stewardship and active supervision when it comes to producing this event. And I would encourage you to think about how you can build in a safety net to any high stakes or client-facing science communication learning projects. And lastly, we set firm and non-negotiable constraints to encourage creativity. While our students and presenters have near complete freedom over their story, there are logistical needs that need to be met for a live event. So we set some constraints in place with a style and branding handbook. These constraints help us ensure that the presentation materials engage our audiences in ways that are professional, meet their learning needs, and are accessible. Constraints can include things like font choice, color contrast for readability, navigating copyright and patient privacy, and suggestions for inclusive language use. So you might think that a 10-page document of technical rules stifles creativity, but I assure you that it helps the science stories shine in their best light. Because when students and presenters know what they must do to deliver a professional and engaging presentation, it frees them up to make creative and exciting choices that still meet their audience's needs. And we also learn from our audience members each year on how to create a more inclusive event. Students often bring these guidelines to future work placements, so there is a longer-term impact of establishing these shared best practices together. So I highly recommend creating a cohesive set of written constraints or expectations for any project where multiple groups are working together towards a shared goal. I have learned many things while supporting Northern Med Talks over the years, and that includes leveraging our diverse strengths of partners, supporting freedom with a safety net, and setting constraints to encourage creativity. But overall, I've been most impressed by what our students say in their final reflections of this activity, that assembling their own toolkit of strategies to bring to a partnership really pushed them to develop confidence in themselves, in their skills, and in the value of their science communication training. So I hope you see some opportunities to apply some of our insights to your own work, and I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Michelle, thank you so much for this presentation. I would like to open it up to our larger group with any questions for Michelle.
Hi, yeah, I would like to ask a question. So thanks already for your really lovely presentation. I really like the format of that whole project you showed us. I just have a question. Did you ever evaluate if this whole event goes back to the healthcare provider who is on stage? So did they somehow took something back within their practice? Did you evaluate that from that whole course somehow?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Evaluation is a huge piece that we're always trying to evolve with this. So we have surveys and opportunities for sort of semi-structured interviews following each of our Med Talks event. So we send a survey to each of our presenters following the event to ask questions like, do you feel like you increased your confidence in presenting to this kind of audience? What strategies might you take from this event into your future work? And asking about the nature of the partnership and how they feel they may have benefited, or what we can do better to make it a more productive relationship for next year. It's tough to figure out how much of a difference this mentorship made maybe as an intervention, in that the presentation styles that our presenters bring are so diverse coming into the event. But what we often hear is a few months down the line from the event, our presenters come back to us and say, you know what, I use that strategy that my student built with me when I'm teaching my graduate students, or in my clinic, or when I'm working with other individuals for presentations. So it's been exciting to see that there has been an impact with our presenters, and I would love to look for more information about that on the long term.
Awesome,
Great.
thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Yeah, and thank you, Elizabeth, for your question. There are two questions in the chat, and the first one I'm going to ask really quick, and then move on to the second, and then I'll give you a couple minutes to answer. Then we'll move into our final presentation. A question: is the guidebook available for other people to use, or would you be willing to share it?
That's a great question. I would love to be able to make it public. We've not thought of doing that before.
Okay.
Much of it pulls from best practices that I'm sure many people here are aware of in terms of presentations. I think it's very specific to our event, but maybe there's a version that I could share online that would be transferable for others.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. I will allow anyone to follow up with Michelle. She put her email on there. We can figure out how to connect you. And then the last question, about a minute before we move on, it says, are there elements that stand out over time as being the most challenging part of the pair work for your students?
I think each partnership and each topic brings its own challenges. I think one of the interesting pieces is just making sure that both partners feel respected and like they have equal contribution to developing this final product. While the presenter is the one on stage and it is their presence and their delivery that carries it, they really are trying to incorporate the best practices from our students as well. But not everyone has the same preferences when it comes to delivery style, animation style, visual style. So I just think that the challenging part is the give and take between the partners. But that's also the place where there is a lot of growth from both sides. How do you provide advice in a way that is constructive, but respects the preferences of your partner as well? So I think it's a challenge navigating that, but having at least a logistics team with a consistent set of rules helps everyone know how to move forward in sort of a unified direction, even if they all navigate their own path.
Excellent. Michelle, thank you so much. All right, we're going to move on to our final presenter today. And again, just a reminder that we will have a couple of minutes at the end where we'll open up for questions for all three of our panelists. So Nick Bennett, are you ready?
I am. Thank you.
All right. All right. So Nick Bennett researches power, ideology, and belonging in science communication. They are a postdoctoral fellow with the SciComm Identities Project at Michigan State University. But Nick is also finishing their PhD at the University of Texas in Austin. Nick engages arts and science-based research and practice to critique, disrupt, and reimagine science communication spaces. Alongside scientists, artists, activists, and community members, they hope to expand the circle of human concern in science communication and STEM.
Thank
Take
you,
it away,
April.
Nick. Yeah, of course.
Appreciate it. And it's so lovely to be here. So great to see some familiar names and faces and some new ones. I'm Nick. I use they, them pronouns. A quick visual description of me. I am a white, non-binary person. I have kind of blue, gray, green eyes. I'm more on the femme side today. Got some makeup on, and I have undercut with dark brown hair with a little bit of blue in it, as well as a brown long sleeve shirt with like a ribbon bow tie. So happy to be here today. I'll share my slides. Here we are. All right, so when I proposed this, I had some ambitious plans. And so the title is Centering Critical and Culturally Relevant Pedagogy in the Graduate Science Communication Classroom. So this is drawing from some graduate courses that Anthony Dudo, my advisor, and I have taught. And now I've kind of expanded to speaking with early career scientists. So any kind of science communication classroom, this would probably apply to. And talking about the framework, critical and culturally relevant pedagogy, I'll speak very briefly about the framework, and then we're going to do an example. So our agenda is that we will speak a bit about the framework. I'm going to zoom in on kind of some aspects of culturally relevant pedagogy that can be addressed through pedagogy of the oppressed. And if you know me, I'm always trying to put arts in it. So we're going to use some theater of the oppressed today. And we'll actually do an exercise called the Great Game of Power. We'll do a virtual version. And I'll talk about how I'll do it. I usually do it live as well. So that'll give us a chance to kind of be really zoomed out, thinking about this framework, why I'm doing things I'm doing, and then we'll practice it and hopefully get to play with it a little bit. And then I'll open it up and hopefully there's some tools here, either in the framework itself or in the exercise. Maybe you want to borrow some pieces of it. And then I look forward to my favorite part, the discussion and questions where y'all get to bring what you bring. So just a brief intro to culturally relevant pedagogy. It also goes by other names, culturally responsive pedagogy. People have been in conversation with this original work by Gloria Ladson-Billings about other ways to improve it, but she proposes that teaching should do at least 3 things. It should contribute to academic success. It should help students develop positive cultural identities, their own identities, not just the ones that are the dominant ones in schools. And it should support students to recognize, understand, and critique current social inequalities. And so one way that I do this in the classroom is using pedagogy and a form of theater that comes from it, of the oppressed. So pedagogy of the oppressed, for my fans of it out there, Paulo Freire brings up this idea of problem, like instead of me sitting on the stage and saying, hey, I'm an expert, I have all the answers, instead of this deficit model that we know we're against, but it's so difficult for us to kind of get out of sometimes. Instead of me giving you answers, instead I pose a question, I pose a problem. And so instead of this banking style education where I see you as empty, ready to be filled up, I see you as having what we call funds of knowledge. And so you get to bring your identities, not just your ones that are assimilated to dominant norms, but your own cultural identities, your own gender identities, all the multiple pieces of yourself you get to bring into the room, and we get to learn from you, not just from this kind of expert. And so everyone gets to contribute. So let's do an example of it. So the first thing I'm going to ask you is, from around you, grab like 4 to 5 objects. So I'm going to do the same thing. So grab 4 to 5 objects. Let's see. Yes. All right. When you have your objects, we're going to play the great game of power. This comes from Augusto Boal. If I'm in the classroom, I usually use 4 chairs and a water bottle, but we're virtual, we're going to make do. And I want you to take your objects that you have gathered, and I want you to arrange these objects in a way so that, in your opinion, one of these objects has the most power. I want you to arrange these objects in a way so that one of them has the most power. And so I'll give you a little bit of time to set up your sculpture. Thank you for doing some art with me. All right. Keep doing that if you need some time to do that, but just for our sake of time, so that you have some time for discussion at the end. If you are interested in sharing, let's take a look at each other's sculptures. So I'm actually going to turn my sharing off so it's easier. And you may want to point your camera down at your sculpture. If you want to share, totally share. If you don't want to share, everything's an invitation, but we would love to see your sculpture. So please, if you would like to, maybe put it in gallery view. Yes, thank you. And point your camera at your sculptures. We won't get a chance to examine everyone's today. We'll only get a chance to look at one, but I do love to see them. So maybe kind of switch between looking at other people's and looking at your own. Amazing. Thank you. This makes my heart so happy. And next, what we'll do is we'll have someone volunteer. So would one person be willing to show off their sculpture? We're going to ask you not to explain it at first. We'll let you explain it last. Artist explains last. So would someone volunteer to show us their sculpture?
Volunteers, anyone?
Yeah.
Nick, oh yeah, good. All right, couple people raising their hands. Petra,
Oh,
you want to
wonderful.
take it
Sorry, I
away?
wasn't even looking for the hands.
Nope, you're good.
Petra, would you like to show? Oh, we're seeing it. Thank you, Petra. Let's all take a look at Petra's sculpture. Petra, we're going to give you a chance at the end to explain it to us. But so that we don't bias us, we're going to
okay,
just
can you
put that-
see it?
Yeah, thank you for showing us.
Okay. I'm holding
All
the
right.
camera, so that is why I'm wobbling.
Oh no. Well, if you get tired, please take a break. And so what we're going to do as a group, and put this in the chat or feel free to unmute, is the first step is we're going to read this image like we're in a museum. So first thing is literally, what do you see? So describe. Literally, what do you see? And feel free to put it in the chat, or if you want to come off mute. What do you see? Yeah. April sees a to-do book. Alexandra says the paper is under the highlighter, the book, the ruler. Y'all are very good at literally describing things. Sometimes when I work with scientists, we want to go straight to interpretation. Mouse to run off the stuff. Yes. A row of objects from long to short on paper. Thank you, Michelle. Wonderful. So that's literally what's there. We're trying to get at like what we can see. And sometimes kind of behind the scenes, this can be difficult. So we're so used to making stories and interpretation and going to this next step that sometimes you have to say, what makes you think that? So just as a kind of background thing, a question you can have in your pocket is, what makes you think that? If folks skip to this next step, which we're going to do, is analyze. So which object has the most power? According to you, we're probably going to get a lot of answers. This is that funds of knowledge. And then maybe why you think that. Thank you, Elizabeth. Elizabeth thinks the mouse has the most power. Yeah, and if you want to say why, the eraser. Yeah, so we have some differences. Wonderful. It's so great to have a lot of differences. The highlighter, because it can mess everything up. Thank you, Alexandra. Yeah, there's lots of different. Mouse as it steers my computer. Thank you, Franz. The diary. Oh, thank you. Just for sake of time, I'm going to keep moving, but it's really nice to know that Petra probably had an intention and probably knows which is the most powerful in their opinion, but we have some ideas as well. And then the last step would be relate. So what does this remind you of when it comes to science communication? So if this is an image of science communication, what does it symbolize? Thank you, Petra, for holding the camera for so long. Feel free to take breaks if you need to. So if this is science communication, we know we literally see maybe a mouse, a highlighter, a to-do book, but if it's science communication, what is it? And yeah, access to data might be central. I like that Alexandra earlier said the highlighter can mess things up. That feels very relatable to sometimes my practices. I'm so mischievous, but that also means there can be some chaos and so on. Wonderful. Keep these coming. Petra, I want to give you a chance to tell us what you intended before I close out as well. So let's hear from the artists themselves.
All right.
Yeah, thank you very
Petra.
much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Great fun. So the highlighter has for me the first priority to focus and to, stay focused. This is actually a bunch of sticky notes. Oh, can you see that? Sticky notes. And again, that's focus for me, concentrate on the right things, sort the other stuff out. And that's a rubber. It's not a mouse, it's a rubber to correct your errors.
Oh, I appreciate the symbolism.
And you do better next time.
I love all this deep symbolism. Thank you, Petra. And if we had more time, we would even dig into like each of the things that you said. I know that you're bringing amazing experiences and cultural knowledges and identities to the room. So you can dig into each of these things. I never told you what power was, but we can discuss, what is power? How does it relate? Michelle was talking earlier about equal partnerships. That's power. And so it opens up a great discussion using people's own identities and cultures. And so it's an example, an instance of that theory. So hopefully there's something here that's a gift to you. Thank you so much for being here. And I'm so excited to hear what y'all have to offer.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
Thank
what
you for the
questions do you have? It was, yeah. Well, we'll open it up just for a few minutes to for questions for our most recent speakers specifically, and then I'll move on to our to a larger forum. So questions for Nick. Questions for Nick.
Here's Frans, Nick. I was just wondering, Nick, how do students respond to this exercise? What do they will learn in terms of science communication?
Yes. So I typically do this one. I think that sometimes they trust me a lot at first. When I bring out chairs and a water bottle, they're like, okay, Nick's doing something. And I think at least by that ending relate, it starts to make sense, because usually the week before we have talked about what is science communication. There's so many different definitions. I've had them draw their definition, which if you'd like to come to my dissertation on the 22nd, I've done more of that. But kind of they've already thought about what it is and how we've defined it, and then using an image and saying, okay, in this image, which one is the science communicator? Is the rubber the science communicator, or is it the to-do list? And people then can really make visible a lot of the assumptions that they have about power, about ideology, and it helps us think about, okay, we say we want dialogue. But I come from a scientific institution that has a lot of power, and dialogue it's not easy to make it equal. And maybe it's not possible, but how do we think about that? So we can really dive deeper into their definitions. But as far as they react, they're very generous. And because they are giving the knowledge and it's coming from them, I think that it's more engaging in that way as well. Instead of me saying, power, according to Foucault, is blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Sure, that would just leak out of my own brain, if not theirs.
Right, exactly. So there's a Siddharth had Siddharth's hands up. Siddharth, would you like to ask your question?
Hi. Thanks, April. Hi, Nick. I think that's a very lovely exercise and very interesting to hear about. I'm sure you've had lots of interesting learnings. I was actually more interested in knowing if there was anything specific that you or the other participants in your class had to unlearn as a result of this exercise. Would there be anything that you would like to share with?
Oh, such a great question. Thank you for this. I think constantly unlearning. Yeah, and especially because of, I'll speak from my own experience. And I think generally students have a similar experience, but I have a mixture of identities. I'm white, so that gives me a lot of privilege, and it means I don't see a lot of things. But when I listen to someone else who has a different experience, talk about what power means, their experiences with science communication, sometimes I can have my own eyes open to, whoa, I wasn't seeing that. So I'm trying to think of a specific instance. Oh, I know a recent one. So recently for our SciComm Identities project, we're working with pre-tenure professors, and we did it with chairs. And my favorite moment, though, was when one of the participants was like, and here's how power is operating in this room. So all the researchers had been sitting at the back of the room. And we'd been typing away because we were doing participant observation, and all the students are in the front, and y'all have this kind of power because you're paying our fellowship. And it was just a great making visible a lot of these things that are silent. And it really encouraged the researchers to be like, oh yeah, maybe we should practice what we preach. And maybe the power can't be equalized exactly. Maybe we don't want it. Power's not always this domination, but it really made visible, like, oh, maybe as researchers, we could take more care to not be doing that banking model. So thank you for that question. I think I constantly unlearn things through this exercise.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Nick. So there's another question for Nick, and then we're going to open it up for our last couple minutes to the larger group. And there's a question about our questioner says, I really love the idea of Freire and Ball, but wondering if there is something that is a more introductory than these two. So basically the question is, are these might be too radical or skeptical for novices, because Katie teaches workshops. So is there anything introductory, I guess,
I think that
that is available?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
No, is there a text? I think that's what I'm getting. Is there some sort of volume that is a little more introductory? Yes, I apologize.
Yes. As far as a text, I'll have to think about that, because yeah, you don't necessarily want to assign pedagogy press. It's quite dense. Yeah, I think that this exercise is often my first one, because a lot of theater of the oppressed, it requires us to put our bodies into it, and that can be kind of scary. But when we're arranging objects, it's a little bit easier. As far as text, I'll have to think about that, because you're right, that's not a great text to assign, but maybe you draw from their text, and I think the conversation that Alexandra and Katie are having of, yeah, how might we scaffold this? Maybe that's our maybe that's a good task for us to think about, of, yes, we have this theory, but it maybe it's lost in this academic language. Maybe we as trainers and facilitators can think about being that scaffold. Such a great question, Katie. Thank you.
Right. Well, as you're in your role, upcoming role as a postdoc, I'm sure you'll have plenty of projects, but now you can think about this one too. All right. There's a note that says there's a lot of accessible material written for adult learners and immigrant populations learning new languages. So that's a great place. That's a great place for you to start, Nick. Anyway, we have a couple of minutes, 4 minutes. So I'd like to open it up for general questions. Anyone who has another question to ask any of our speakers. The floor is open. What can we answer for you? Franz has one.
Yeah, I have a question for Michelle, because I wanted to ask you before, the kind of thing that you do in pairing up professionals with students, has it like the form of a course? Is it like a semester course where they work on this like a day a week or so? And if so, it's a follow-up question. How do you deal with, because not every professional is so good at speaking in public, and you may team up a student with somebody who doesn't make progress. It's not because of the student, but because of the professional who just doesn't have talent. How do you deal with that?
That's a great question. So this is a capstone assignment for a course called Science Communication Practice that runs for a full 3 months. But we also contribute to it in a number of the other courses in second term. So we feed into it from about 3 different courses as part of our program. We actually brief our students on it in the fall. So they're thinking about it for many months before they start, but the active part of the project is January right through until April 25th or 27th when that event goes live. And to try to mitigate that challenge that you pose about partnerships depending on the enthusiasm or openness or skills or willingness of the speaker, we actively recruit speakers a full year in advance, saying, are you open to being part of a learning and mentorship process? Because this is not about you just coming to give a talk. It's about you being willing to be a learner and a participant as part of that process. Because if they don't want to participate in the coaching, then that doesn't make for a great partnership. So we've recruited people who are open to being partners and to learn.
Excellent. That's a good idea. It's amazing when you thinking about, I think one of the things that these short presentations really don't fully show is the amount of preparation that goes into, you know, the one day or the science training or thinking about the event itself. There's a question from Brittany that says, what's your favorite science communication activity to speak at short workshops for postdocs? This is open to all speakers. What's your thoughts on that? Yeah, Alexandra, go ahead.
Anything that gets them standing up and in a circle and moving as fast as possible, literally. Any opportunity to disrupt the sitting down, the teacher in front, talking at people.
Yes, definitely going to agree with Alexandra here. I showed you mine. I'll often start with that activity to talk about what is power. And then I have another one that I really love called culture collage, where we think about our inner identities and those that other people see. And then we kind of situate ourselves. What audiences might I be best able to connect with? And so kind of connecting our identities with where we might be best positioned, where we might see things better, where we might not see things better, and as well as power. And I also love having people draw what they think science communication is. So those are my faves.
One that we find helps launch our discussions is that we ask our participants to list a number of audiences they may engage with. Could be funders, people they're writing grants to, community groups, neighbors. And then we ask them on a sliding scale to place these audiences from non-specialist, like they don't know very little or never heard of your topic, to they know more than you do about your topic. And it helps our participants get into this headspace of like every audience thinks about your work differently, and therefore our approaches need to be different. So it's a nice icebreaker, I guess, for thinking about diverse audiences.
Excellent. We have a contribution from Kath Connolly saying, I've asked participants to draw a diagram of the relationship between their work and the public. Yeah, very nice. Well, we have come to the end of our time. I would encourage anybody who wants to connect with the speakers, you can do that offline and so on and so forth. But thank you everybody for taking time out of your day to learn about participatory approaches to science communication. Thank you so much. And thanks again for joining us.
And save the chat for references if you want.
And I want to thank
Yes.
April for chairing this session, because it has been quite some work. And finally, I should
of course, happy to do it.
Yeah. I should remind everyone that on May 22nd, it's a Wednesday, there will be another webinar organized by the Teaching Forum called Transforming Science Communication Pedagogy in the Age of AI. And we're working on putting this together. Yeah.
Great.
Yes.
More information, is soon to follow.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Bye.